Dr. David McKenzie, our guest. He's a couples counselor and a sex therapist, a theologian, former prison chaplain.
Priest,
all of that.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And you've seen a lot of changes over the years.
I have.
As we all have.
Yes.
Sometimes men say they're committed, or women say they're committed, until somebody says, well then, make a commitment. Put a diamond on my finger, or set a wedding date, and then, as I said, firing a starter pistol behind Secretariat,
Yeah.
I'm gone.
You'll find more.
If I'm telling the world that I'm
You'll find more women
wanting
that, especially when they get to reproductive threshold around 27, 28.
Sure.
They're wanting some legal protection, although in our country, 2 years you are
Right.
seen as married. They're wanting some sense in which their child's raised in a stable home life. They want to be able to have the same last name, perhaps, or a compound name. So there's an element of stability there.
What about getting married for the wrong reasons?
It's done all the time.
Your pressure from your family.
Yeah.
I'm a certain age, I better marry someone,
Yeah.
not madly in love with the someone, just better get there.
Yeah, that actually happened in my first marriage, in which my ex-wife and I, whom were very good friends, we've raised our children together and I think done a good job. But it come to the point in our 3-year courtship in which we were having real doubts about marrying, but there was so much pressure. Mom and Dad were driving from BC to Ontario, and it was all there, and we just felt the pressure to get married, and we shouldn't have.
Right,
You know,
I know.
I'm
I've
very
heard
happy
that.
with the children I've got. I wouldn't
Or
trade them for anything.
You just happen to be the girl in his life, and it's time to get married, so he marries you.
Yeah, that's small town thinking, right?
Very much.
Yeah.
So men and sex and ego and feeling like a hunk and a real guy, you know, is
Yeah.
that part of it at all? The fear of commitment?
No, I think it's like I say, I think the culture has a lot to do with it. We live in an age in which young people really do not expect to stay in their jobs. They don't expect to have 40-year careers. A lot of them don't even have pension plans. It's a throwaway culture.
Sure.
And so it's a culture that speaks to that.
So in this day and age, in the throwaway culture, culture of immediacy,
Yeah.
what are some of the benefits of committing?
I'm happy you asked that question. Commitment, let me put it this way. We marry our emotional equal. We hook up with our emotional equal.
We do?
Yeah.
What does that mean, doctor?
Well, in imagotherapy, it says that we choose a partner at a subconscious level to heal deeper childhood wounds. We've talked about this at other times on your show. And so therefore, there's no such thing as a person who has real problems with intimacy hooking up with somebody with no problems of intimacy. You will hook up with somebody who has problems with intimacy. It may be expressed differently. That is the person you should be with. Every person you've been with in a long-term relationship, unless there's abuse or drug addiction, is the one that you will grow with, and that's the one you stay with.
Sure, your mirror. That's how you learn.
That's right.
He's afraid of commitment, you're afraid of commitment, and you're in a committed
So
relationship,
you actually hold the key to each other's deep psychological healing. And what happens is couples will come to a place in which, whoa, if I'd known this, would I ever gotten married? That's precisely the growing edge of the relationship. That's where the sparks fly and where you're confronting those deep childhood issues. And if you just part, you're going to have to do it all over again in the next relationship.
Okay, so I get that. So fear of being abandoned, for instance. If you felt abandoned as a child, then you marry a man and you're afraid to
No, it's more
trust.
than that. No, you choose a partner who will trigger deep childhood pains.
Great.
Issues, no, it's meant to be. issues from your childhood. The real you comes out with your partner, not with the therapist, not with your kids, not with work buddies.
Okay.
And that's why I insist on seeing couples together, not separately. Because the real them comes out with each other, and you'll see sparks flying.
Sure. So if you were a child who never felt like anybody was taking care of you, truly,
You'll find
that you were
somebody
alone.
else with the
You
same.
find somebody else who has that same issue.
Yes, or who will abandon you, or who will
You
not.
felt abandoned as a kid, you felt abandoned as a kid, so now the two of you feel abandoned together.
That's right. Or it can be such that you'll find somebody who will abandon you and keep the repetition going, to repeat
Okay.
But
Once
don't,
again.
don't despair, because that's exactly the person you need to be with. And when couples get into trouble, they say, well, let's get out of here. No, that's the precise time in which they grow the most.
Okay, so if you had a father who was a philanderer, for instance, never faithful to the ma.
Sure.
And so you pick those boys. You just do. To learn the lesson?
Well, it's actually an attachment. It's more about your relationship with your mother than your father. The father is actually secondary. So if you have a cold, abandoning...
Whether you're male or female?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
If you have a cold, abandoning, because the first person you ever fell in love with was your mother. And if that mother was not emotionally available for you, at a very pre-conscious level, you were profoundly hurt. So what happens is you're not going to get hurt again. So you'll choose partners who will leave you, abandon you, be alcoholics, or you'll sabotage the intimacy at a certain point.
Okay, because it feels familiar.
Not only it feels familiar, but you're not going to get hurt again.
I see.
I'm going to marry somebody emotionally unavailable because I'm not going to get hurt again.
Right, and how do you help people who have been hurt in a relationship, past relationship?
It's more than that.
Dumped.
No, we choose relationships that will hurt us and dump us because we're reenacting childhood pain. And so I start the person on a road of encountering their inner child and working through that past
Right,
pain.
so that says to me it's important if you're at that point
Yep.
to work through it.
Yes, and get help if you need to.
Okay, or if it's a freedom thing, whatever. He says, guess what?
Yeah.
I want to go to Europe. And she says, my husband isn't going to Europe without me. And he says, what are you talking about? You can go where you want. I'm going to go where I want.
Well, I would say the relation, if suddenly he drops that on her, things have not been talked about along the way.
Right.
You don't just drop something like that on a partner. Things have been happening along the way in which they're not communicating.
Sure, but often you hear it in relationships. Who are you to tell me what to do? I'm a grown-up.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I love you madly, but I have a life and you have a life,
Yeah.
and you've got one more dependent on the other.
Yeah. You'll often
That's never
find
good.
couples who come to the place where they finish raising their children, and you're constantly renegotiating your relationship. It's
Right.
an active living covenant. And so when one gets married at 22, that's not the same covenant or agreement you have at 50. It's constantly being renegotiated.
And your role's being renegotiated. If you've been
Absolutely.
a stay-at-home mom, and now the children are gone, and your role was that,
Yeah.
and he's still working or not, or he retires, and then there's the two of you.
I've just heard on
Over
the
the
radio.
cornflakes.
Just heard on the radio this morning. There's a new stat out saying that more and more men are being house husbands while the wives go out to work, and it has to do with the bottom line.
And it does have to do with the bottom line often.
yeah.
If somebody is in a terrible relationship, they stay because they have no money and they have no idea how to get out.
That's tragic. Yeah,
That is tragic. But how do you get out if your option is to sleep in the street?
Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah. Well, there is a safety net of social assistance, but
Right.
nobody should be staying in an abusive relationship.
I totally agree.
And often the reason why women stay in there is either through battered wife syndrome or that they have a deep need to be abused.
Right. So the keys to staying committed, if you want to stay committed, like you made the commitment and you're having one of those days where you think, I didn't really know him at all.
Yeah, well, you will come to that. To remain human, we must remain unpredictable. And so you'll come to those places of saying, oh my God, do I want to be in this relationship? It's called communication. And when you finish communicating, you communicate some more.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
thanks for communicating
wanna
with
th-
us
I
all
w-
these years because, as you know, Studio 4 is ending.
I know, and I want to thank you for the 6 years of having me on here regularly, and it's been an absolute joy, and I wish you the best.
Well, I've learned a lot.
Oh, okay, well, I have to.
tell you.
Okay.
I perhaps learned more than you did. Who
Oh.
knows?
Thank you, Fanny.
Thank you. Dr. David McKenzie.